The human skeleton consists of 206 named bones. It's grouped into two divisions known as the axial skeleton, which consists of 80 bones, and the appendicular skeleton, made up of 126 bones. The axial skeleton is made up of the skull, which consists of bones that make up the cranium, the face, the hyoid bone, and the ossicles. It includes the vertebral column, which is made up of 26 individual bones, as well as the thorax, made up of the sternum and the ribs. Collectively, we have 80 bones in the axial skeleton. Let's start by looking at the cranium. The frontal bone is the anteriormost bone of the skull. The occipital bone is located posteriorly. The ethmoid is visible through the orbit. The sphenoid is lateral. We have two temporal bones, a right and a left. And we also have two parietal bones, a right and a left. The facial bones include two maxilla or maxillary bones, two zygomatic bones that contribute to the cheekbones, two lacrimal bones located by the tear duct. We have two nasal bones that form the bridge of the nose. We have two palatine bones that form the roof of the hard palate. We have two tiny little bones that are visible through the nasal cavity, known as the inferior nasal concha. They're little ridges located inferior of the nasal cavity. We also have the largest bone of the face, known as the mandible, or the lower jaw, and we have the vomer. It forms the floor of the nasal cavity. Let's look at the skull, starting with the cranium. The highlighted structure is the frontal bone. This is the right parietal bone, the right temporal bone, and this is the occipital bone. This is the left parietal bone, the left temporal bone, and finally, the last two, the sphenoid and the ethmoid. Now the facial bones are as follows. Remember, we have a right and a left of the following: a zygomatic bone, lacrimal bone, maxilla, nasal bone, inferior nasal concha. We have a vomer, one mandible, and lastly, we have a right and a left palatine bones. Within our ear, we have two tiny bones called the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. The malleus is closest to the tympanic membrane, while the stapes or stapes covers the oval window. It's the medial most of the three. A way to remember it from lateral to medial is MIS. Malleus, incus, stapes. The adult vertebral column has a total of 26 bones. We have 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic vertebrae, 5 lumbar vertebrae, 1 sacrum, and 1 coccyx. A way to remember how many bones are found in each region are as follows. We eat breakfast at 7, lunch at 12, and dinner at 5. Get creative. Now the thorax is made up of 12 pairs of ribs and an anterior bone called the sternum. The axial skeleton also includes the hyoid bone. The hyoid is the only bone in the body that does not articulate with any other bone. Instead, it helps support the tongue, and it serves as a muscle attachment site for muscles of the neck. As the name states, the appendicular skeleton deals with the appendages, or the limbs. The upper limb consists of the pectoral or shoulder girdle, as well as the free limb. The lower limb consists of the pelvic girdle and the free limb as well. In total, the appendicular skeleton contains 126 bones. Let's start with the pectoral girdle. It's made up of 2 bones, an S-shaped bone called the clavicle, and a flat bone called the scapula. Since we have a right and a left extremity, we have 2 of each. Now let's focus on the free limb. The arm, or the brachial region, consists of a humerus. The forearm, or the antebrachium, is made up of 2 bones. A radius, which lays lateral, and an ulna, which lays medial. If you're looking at the head of the radius, you're going to notice that it looks like a circle. The ulna has this spot right here. From the side, it looks like a U. U for ulna. The wrist and the hand are made up of 8 carpal bones, 5 metacarpals, and various phalanges. Each of our carpal bones is a named bone. Starting from the thumb, the proximal row is made up of the scaphoid, the lunate, the trochlearum, and the pisiform. The distal row contains the trapezium, that is closest to the thumb, the trapezoid, the capitate, and the hamate. You can use the mnemonic, "Please stop letting those people touch the cadaver's hand," to remember the orders. Proximal row, starting at the thumb. Distal row, starting at the thumb. You can also use the following. She looks too pretty. Try to catch her. Whatever works. Now, the metacarpals are the bones that make up the palm of the hand. We always start with the thumb, or the pollex. Therefore, we call the one that's associated with the thumb the first metacarpal. The pointer finger consists of the second metacarpal, middle finger, third metacarpal, ring finger, fourth metacarpal, fifth metacarpal pertains to the pinky. Now the phalanges are broken down into a proximal phalanx, a middle phalanx, and a distal phalanx. The only one that does not have a middle phalanx is the thumb. The thumb only has a proximal phalanx and a distal phalanx. Therefore, we have a total of 14 phalanges in one hand. The lower extremity is very similar to the upper extremity. For the lower extremity, we have the pelvic girdle that is made up of 2 hip bones that come together at the pubic symphysis. The hip bone is actually the fusion of 3 bones known as the ilium, the ischium, and the pubis. The thigh region consists of the strongest and largest bone in the body known as the femur. It looks similar to the humerus, it's just larger and the features are more pronounced. The head is more noticeable and the neck is more prominent. The knee region, or the patellar region, is made up of 2 sesamoid bones called patella. They look like triangles, therefore they have a base and a pointed region that is called the apex. The leg refers to the bones inferior to the knee. It's made up of 2 bones. A lateral bone that is long and skinny known as the fibula, and a medial bone that is a little bit bigger and bulkier known as the tibia. The tibia, as I mentioned, is medial. Therefore, it's associated with the medial malleolus. The fibula is lateral and therefore associated with the lateral malleolus. A way to remember it, fibula for lateral. The ankle mortise joint in the foot is made up of the tarsals, the metatarsals, and again the phalanges. We have 7 tarsal bones. The superiormost is known as the talus. The heel bone is known as the calcaneus. Laterally, we have the cuboid. Medially, we have a boat-shaped bone called the navicular. Then we have 3 small bones known as the first, second, and third cuneiforms. Another way to remember them are the medial, intermediate, and lateral cuneiforms. The terms are interchangeable. Just like with the palm of the hand, in the foot we're going to find metatarsals. The first metatarsal pertains to the big toe, which is called the hallux. The 5th metatarsal deals with the pinky. Again, we have proximal, middle, and distal phalanges, except for the hallux. The hallux only has a proximal and a distal. The end.